similar to what I mentioned with Raja, there's a lot of talk about some of these terms and a lot of talk about the opportunity, but no one ever stops to define them. So I want to define what we mean by location-targeted mobile advertising, because there's so many different flavors. There's formats such as display, search. There's geo-targeting, which itself has different levels of precision and granularity. So what are the kind of things that you guys are offering or working on now, just to kind of level set at the beginning, and we'll go into what that means and what's performing and that kind of stuff, but just for definitional sake, what are the types of location-based ads you're working with?
Yeah, I mean, there's mobile search, mobile video, mobile display, where Verve works, and messaging too. You have text messaging and push notifications. In mobile display, you have there's two types of distribution channels. There's mobile web and in-app. And I don't think a lot of people don't realize how much in-app has kind of taken over the opportunity. So today, in-app traffic makes up close to 90% of all mobile traffic.
That's where the impressions are.
Exactly. So, and mobile's growing like crazy. I mean, it's 62% now of all digital, and could be 70 by the end of the year. It's just amazing what's happening. So there's tons of opportunities. There's 550 billion mobile display impressions available monthly versus 6 billion local search queries in mobile. So it's a significant opportunity. And then we work on in-app advertising. So we created a rich media ad unit that a banner that pops into an expandable panel, keeps consumers in the app, which is extremely important because you lose half your traffic once you send them out. And then even on there, we have a bunch of CTAs that we track that I know we're going to talk about later.
Yeah, that's interesting. I want to circle back to some of the format evolutions in expandable ad units and stuff like that, because I think that's important. Jeff?
Yeah, I'd just say one term that we didn't discuss was day parting. And I have a broadcast background, and so for us, the mobile platform that YP has, you can actually day part, and that for an SMB is particularly helpful. So they've really never been able to get into the radio or television game, and now they can with day parting through mobile. Yeah, and mobile also, the opportunity is if you look at the usage patterns of mobile, desktop, tablet, and any other media you throw in there, they peak at different times in the day, so you can optimize your day parting in terms of when you're targeting, not just where. Right. Well, like when Dunkin' Donuts wants to run a special, and they just want to do morning drive. There you go, put them in morning drive. That's great. So let's go a little bit further. This is kind of a premise, and a lot of people have probably seen this slide, but I have a slightly different take on it. This is a famous Miri Meeker slide that shows that mobile's opportunity is tied up in the fact that it's now 20% share of users' time with media. However, it only gets a 4% share of the ad dollars going to those comparative media. So therefore, that gap, it represents a big kind of where the equilibrium will happen. In supply and demand terms, the demand is the 20% supply, or the other way around, the supply is the 20%. So that's good, and that's kind of supportive that this growth is here. I also look at this in somewhat of a negative or a challenging light, in that in the meantime, this is tantamount to an oversupply, which has lowered prices on average throughout the kind of mobile advertising world. So my premise is that in order to kind of counteract that, we see a lot of innovations such as format evolutions, expandable ad units. And one of these things that I think is going to reverse this trend is premiums that can be applied to higher performing ads, and one of the biggest sources of that is location. So that leads up to the question, which is, do you guys kind of agree with that macroeconomic assessment? And if so, what are the types of performance deltas that you're seeing that might drive some of these premiums when mobile location targeting is done right? And we'll get into later what we mean by done right, but for now, the performance deltas that you're seeing, whether that's click-through rates, secondary actions, anything you're comfortable talking about, what can be achieved when it's done?
Go ahead. Yeah, sure. We clearly see significant improvements to a campaign when you add geofencing or geoconquesting or geotargeting of any kind. Historically, our network has achieved a 0.65% CTR and an average CTA of about 7%. And a lot of that's national campaigns. So across the board, and historically performance is 0.2%, right? So it's a 2 to 3 times delta.
Clear difference there.
Exodus. And in the higher CTR, obviously, you get more people transacting and engaging with the on the expandable panels. So we drive more secondary actions. So absolutely correct.
Nice. And we'll get into kind of how the types of tactics that get you those results. But Jeff, any indication of performance lift?
Well, I would say actually just on the supply and demand side,
go for it.
that's kind of what we're here to do, right? We're here to train our sellers to go out there. We're the ones that can put the demand on it.
Create demand.
We have to create the demand, and we haven't done a great job of that up to this point, because quite frankly, at YP, we've only been selling our mobile platform for about 4 months.
Sure.
Which is about 3 months longer than I've been with the company.
Right.
But I know that what we're going to do is we have to, not just YP, but all of the people in our space have to press that demand.
Yeah.
And we have to be great sellers to make that happen, and we have to educate the SMBs, which I don't think we've done a great job up to this point. And now I think we're starting to turn that corner.
Well, and you're also in a very kind of unique position in being one of the many players in the space chasing this opportunity that does have that direct. You don't have the need for a channel because you yourself are a channel and can play that role for third parties. And that gets into some of the kind of arbitrage and revenue shares. But with your owned and operated properties, that's a great place to be, and that is, I think, a result of your legacy business, and I think you guys have done a good job kind of fulfilling that. So now let's talk about...
I think I had one other thing. So the oversupply has actually been really good for a huge part of the business, which is performance. I think people miss that point, right?
Yeah.
So performance 3 years ago was zero. It's a $5 billion business currently.
Yeah.
So it's basically all these games, King.com and and all those are just loving the overabundance.
Oh yeah, and let's
and Facebook is all performance.
Let's also be clear that the lowered prices, if that premise is correct, is great for advertisers.
Yeah.
But it's tough for the publishing side of the equation that's trying to monetize.
So you got the premium finds a nice win-win for everyone.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the things that are being done to achieve some of those results that you guys mentioned. Tom, this is a slide from you, but this is also some of the things that brought up that, Jeff, I welcome you to jump in about, not just where an ad shows up in the geo-targeted sense, but what does it contain? Creative and calls to action is often forgotten as being some of these performance drivers.
Yeah, I mean, being able to do a tight geofence, we do geofences as small as a mile to connect with real-time consumers, is an enabling capability, right? Like if you have crummy inventory and poor creative and bad messaging, it doesn't matter how good you can target the ad to a consumer, right? So I'd like to say that the location is a breakthrough technology, but it's an enabling core capability. It's not the solution. The solution is all the other stuff in the marketing mix that you were doing previously. So world-class messaging and presentation. And this is an example of one of our templates that we did for a company during a trial, Signpost. And it's a beautiful landing page, expandable. It's got a bunch of different calls to action that we track and optimize on the back end. And so they can run this across 10,000 different small business customers. The image will change based on the business vertical or the SMB supplied image.
Sure.
And it's got everything you would need. It's like a mini landing page, but it fits nicely in the kind of app construct.
Well, a lot of dynamic components too. I mean, a lot of people are talking about programmatic these days. Dynamic components, one of them which, not just where it shows up in terms of programmatic, but, the dynamic distance feed. I think that's a nice call to action.
That's a big deal.
You're 0.5 miles away.
Absolutely. We've done A/B testing on dynamic distance on the banner ad, and we see a 40% drop with no dynamic distance. So it almost, it improves the CTR dramatically, just letting the consumer know that, hey, you're literally only a mile away from this offer.
Jeff, you guys are doing a lot, and we're going to see your case study in a bit, but in terms of kind of creative ad units and what's happening there, anything to add, calls to action?
Yeah, so call to action, we had a great example. We had a Phoenix air conditioning in the summer, right? And we came up with a concept for him is return the call within 10 minutes. And so that became his whole campaign, was to return a call within 10 minutes. Now he can only run that for about a week because after a while, his Phoenix and a lot of air conditioners are breaking down. He didn't have the time, but it actually showed great metrics. And again, it's taken that creativity. And it's something that most SMBs haven't had the advantage of being able to do before. And so we're kind of opening up their eyes to, hey, you can get creative with ads. You can do things that are out of the box. Yeah. So it's been, quite frankly, for us internally, it's been refreshing too to work with SMBs and be able to be creative.
Yeah, and that brings up something that, one of the calls to action you see here, I believe, is to call. And calling is something I'm looking at a lot. Do you guys see an uptick in kind of the the mobile era, the smartphone era, where you're bolting a search device to a phone device, call volume, BIA Kelsey data suggests that by 2018 we're going to see 73 billion calls driven to businesses just from mobile search alone because of that just kind of seamless process for the user. So calls, of course, is a big area. I think I have a slide here, that shows that not only that, not just from the usage perspective, but it happens to be what advertisers want. In our survey data, it shows that calls is the highest form of lead that they appreciate. So what are you guys doing around calls? How are you seeing calls as an opportunity to monetize?
Yeah, it's funny because, I mean, that's how it used to be, right?
Yeah.
And then the pendulum completely
sure.
shifted over to clicks, and now it's completely shifted back to calls.
I like to call calls the unsexy cousin of the click, they're finally getting their due
kissing
credit.
Cousins.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, only kissing cousins,
Yeah, right.
maybe second cousins.
Yeah.
No, but you know, and we're talking about a device, the telephone that's 140 years old, and it's outperforming some of these newer, kind of sexier kind of forms of engagement.
I think at the end of the day, psychologically, a store owner feels really comfortable when his phone is ringing. I think that you can never get away from that, of a phone ringing, him feeling like something is going on with his business, as opposed to the internet where he's not sure what's going on out there. And it typically, as a store owner feels good when they can get on the phone because they sell their product better than anybody else. And
it's the perceived ROI. There's a concept we look at with a lot of this kind of SMB sentiment analysis is perceived ROI versus real ROI. And of course, analytics and real ROI is great, but sometimes what sticks out in their mind on a sales call or retaining their business is what they remember, and it's those things like the phone
That's a great point, actually. It's that perception that, well, my phone rang. It could have rung, 3 times, but it rang.
And presumably, based on the data that I've seen, I'm not sure if it's working out for you guys, but calls coming from mobile tend to convert higher because it's a lower funnel transaction. In some cases, they might be out and about looking for something with a sense of immediacy. I'm not sure if that's playing out in your data or anecdotally, but that mobile call tends to be more valuable.
It's actually so there's some verticals where calls are the main thrust, right? Plumbing, electrician, stuff like that. Lawyers,
professional services, auto too. A lot of high value categories.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's a lot that aren't. So retailers don't want people calling them. Most restaurateurs don't want people calling them.
That's true.
And they tend to be the high volume merchants that perform really well with our mobile display because they have a lot of interactions. They need a lot of people. So in the app construct, people don't like to make phone calls. So you actually see, you inherently think, oh, there's going to be a lot more calls. It's a phone, right? You just hit the button and it's a phone call. But they really display, they're engaged, they're doing something, they'll look at your ad, they may do a call to action, save something. But we don't see very high. So I think the call is tied very much to search.
That's
and that's why it's so successful. Someone's already expressed intent and won something, and the call becomes very easy at that point.
That's interesting. So the difference between browser-based calls generated from a browser-based search versus within an app. Interesting. So you think they're converting in different
so we
levels.
don't see huge call numbers, right? So we've done a lot of trials with YP and Haibu and others to try to push the needle on calls, and it's just very interesting.
Interesting. So let's move on. This is interesting. How do SMBs differ as ad buyers? Because I think SMBs are probably a little bit earlier in their adoption cycle of mobile with respect to other things they're used to. And a lot of the things that you guys are building and selling have kind of different unit economics when you're talking about the SMB level, where you have lower budgets, in some cases more personal or manual control needed. So how are you reaching automation, preserving margins, and doing so in a way that maintains some sense of scalability?
Right.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, we built out several programmatic products, one being this thing called VLMO, Verbal Merchant Offers, which is API to API, and literally someone with thousands of SMB customers can run thousands of mobile ad campaigns. And it comes across, it says the location, the messaging on the creative, and that works really well. And that's from our experience managing 1,300 targets or 10,000.
So it can be automated and still be effective?
Absolutely, it can be automated. And we've gotten to a point where we can support any pricing model. So we have partners that have web hosting customers that pay $30 a month, and they want to roll out a new mobile product, so $10. So we support $10 and 1,000 offers delivered or something like that. all the way up to customers that have, customers that spend $20,000, they want to put a $5,000, product in the market. And so we built systems that kind of manage that scale and then deliver. I mean, the key about location and local SMBs is that SMB cares about his location. That's all he cares about.
Sure.
So we have to deliver ROI and optimization and scale down to that one specific campaign times what, 200,000 or something.
Yeah.
So it definitely can be automated.
Yeah. So we're opposite of that, right? So we're not automated at all.
Yeah.
And now we have the luxury of having 3,000 salespeople on the street.
Exactly.
So we're actually more in the education, and not saying that what Tom's doing is not educating, but we're much more relationship built, selling on explaining how this works for them.
That's great.
And what's great about it is we've been able to launch into new verticals. We just sold a politician in New Jersey for target-based precinct.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, I just got an email while we were sitting here. Actually, we just sold in New York, an auto dealer. So these are all like verticals we've never been able to go after. But now with mobile, they get it. It makes sense. And quite frankly, they know they have to be in mobile. They need someone to help explain it to them how they get there.
Yeah. And you don't have somewhat of the margin compression that others do in having that direct channel. So that's great, and you can kind of afford that personal touch.
Yep.
And also something you mentioned is interesting with politicians. Do you feel like in each subsequent election cycle, mobile is getting more and more kind of prevalent, and it would seem to be very location-based and time-based? And you mentioned you have a broadcast background, and that's so cyclical with the ad dollars in television.
Yep. It's right in line with broadcast. Yeah. It's pretty cool, actually.
So we're winding down here. Let's do the case study that you provided.
Yeah, I'll go really quick. So this was a
just tell me when to advance. I think you got 3 slides here.
Okay, no. This is a case study, RC Wiley, which is a furniture store. But not only was it a furniture store, it's also has appliances, and it competes with. You can go to the next slide. It competes with the big boxes, such as Target and a host of others, Best Buy. So they were kind of curious how they could be on mobile and compete with those people. It was simple because it's target based, it's geo fenced.
Sure.
We would just send out a mobile display ad when someone was walking out of a Best Buy or when someone was walking out of an Ashley Furniture or walking in. Actually, is probably a better way to place it.
Sure.
And it ended up working out. You can go to the next one. It ended up working out terrific for them. They put all 3 of their stores on with us, and they are extremely happy. And again, it made them look like they were a big box without really being a big box. They're a small three store location.
I mean, that's another important theme too, is that the kind of democratization of a lot of this technology to be able to empower small businesses to do what was otherwise not available. So that's great. And that's a good place to end because we're out of time. But join me in thanking these gentlemen.